Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to present you with today with more detail about how Jenkins Evergreen works under the hood. So maybe some of you attended this morning the talk of Tyler Corroy about more the whys and the whats. Anyway, I'm going to cover a bit of that so that you're not totally lost if you missed the talk this morning, which is possible. So who am I? I'm Baptiste. I'm working for CloudBees now since 2 years, and I've been contributing to Jenkins for roughly 10 years. So here's where you will be able to find me. So basically, where does Jenkins Evergreen comes from? So by the way, originally we call it Jenkins Essentials if you find some links and everything on the internet. So last year during Jenkins World Contributor Summit, Kohsuke kind of challenged the community to try and find some way for the newcomers to be onboarded into Jenkins more easily and in under 5 minutes and 5 clicks. So seems easy, right? So after a few weeks and everything of trying to find something, some people were thinking, well, nobody needs a wizard, an improved wizard and everything. We came up with something that is actually more than just some wizard improved and better without Jenkins. So try to change everything. So the idea was that, well, we would try to then, provide people with an opinionated version of Jenkins that would be also, by the way, working better on the environment and be automatically configured out of the box with the right defaults. For people who know nothing, it would be better, to be have something that works just, without having to spend a lot of time configuring Jenkins. Because I don't know how much you're using Jenkins in the room, but basically, I think Jenkins, even for experts from scratch, would take, let's say, 1 or 2 hours to do it very, very right. So for someone who's just a newcomer, it's going to take, let's say, many days or maybe a week to get things running in a correct way. I mean, for instance, not running things on a master node and some of those things. So we want things to work out of the box, so pretty easily for anyone wanting to have a look and basically not becoming a Jenkins admin. Also, so one of the foundations of Evergreen is that, well, if we want people to not becoming Jenkins admins, then we want to find a way to take the maintenance away from those people by making sure software is constantly up to date without having to do things by hand. Because I guess the biggest work or issue we have in our field in general, keeping software up to date is an ongoing battle. So having something that would provide you with the advantages of, let's say, kind of SaaS software where basically you have nothing to do, but it's remote and maybe something you don't want for whatever reason, that's yours. But having kind of the advantage of that, but while still running at that on your infrastructure or more handled by your side. So also, it's kind of what I'm also going to be covering today. So there's the user side of this, but there's also the developer side. I mean, we want to offer a way for end users to be productive with Jenkins in as few time as possible, but also be able to provide a really positive loop, feedback loop and everything, so that even developers can find advantages by making sure they are using Evergreen to push changes, to push fixes, and to shorten the feedback loop. Basically, allowing a Jenkins developer, to push an upgrade for a given plugin or even for the core in the next hour after the merge. So not having even weekly would be slow in that ID, right? So how do we do that in a way that's sustainable? Because, well, yeah, we could just upgrade your instance remotely and then let it crash when it happens, which wouldn't be a great experience, I suppose. So we have to find a way to make that sustainable, right? So the way it's going to be doing that is that actually Jenkins Evergreen is going to be upgrading your instance, then it's going to be automatically health checking the instance. And if it's proving to not be, let's say, answering correctly and whatever the health check design we want to do at that stage, then just roll back to the previous stage we were in, so that you'll have to handle some crash and get into fixed mode. So yeah, we want to automatically upgrade your things in a safe way. Also, to kind of wrap it up with those things, we want to be able to actually be aware of when you're crashing, or when there are issues, or when there are warnings or errors in the logs. So, for instance, if your instance is restarting because we are applying or we're pushing a new, what we call an update level, basically if it's not coming back, well, rolling back is a good thing, right, for your single case. But we do want, as the Jenkins project putting those updates, we really are interested a lot by the fact that some people, or just a few people, or every single instance out there crashed after that update. Then we are going to be able to say on the back end, okay, that update is crap, so let's taint it so that nobody gets served that update anymore. And given we are going to use different channels, canary channel, let's say a beta channel or a general channel, so that we are, deploying, pushing updates progressively and seeing what it seems to be looking like. We are able to make sure, like you already do. That's kind of the reason why it's called Evergreen, with, for instance, Chrome or those new softwares that has been doing that kind of thing for years now, making sure that basically they can push fixes right away, and you can submit to different channels depending on your desire to be on the bleeding edge or not, or in Debian, for instance, when you're using unstable and everything. So yeah, that's the same idea globally. And so we can be using some modern techniques like canary testing, and we do want to get those feedback, that telemetry logging and telemetry in general, to be able to, on the operation side of Jenkins Evergreen, be able to do decisions with regard to deploying a given update level to the whole fleet of instances out there, or just tainting it because we know it's causing issues and we have to find out before pushing it everywhere. And finally, what we call the fourth and the pillars, one of the pillars of Jenkins Evergreen specification, which is, by the way, if you followed maybe some things done by Liam or Liam Newman earlier, which is a Jenkins enhancement proposal, the JEP 300, which describes the global rationale about Jenkins Evergreen. We also want something that's opinionated and works out of the box and with embedded documentation and everything. Basically, what's the title given here? Making sure users can't fail. They are provided with not only the software to do what they need to do, but also the documentation and the barrier on the sides to make sure they go in the right direction. Also, last but not least, Evergreen is fully open source. I will show you just a slide at the end of the presentation where basically there's the 2 or 3 commands to get you started if you want to hack on the project. But it's fully open source and fully developed in the open, meaning, for instance, the channel where we chat the day or we synchronize and everything is fully accessible to anyone. It's on Gitter for that very case, so yeah. And so, now I'm done with explaining the origin of the project and trying to make you understand, if you didn't yet, what it is and where we are going and why and everything. Now I'm going to explain a bit more how it works. So basically, when you are starting an Evergreen instance, you are using Docker locally, whatever what we call the flavor is, and you are going to have it connecting to what we call the Evergreen backend. And the backend is going to serve back the instance. Basically, the instance is going to register to the backend, basically allowing us on the server side to make sure what client, what instance is talking to us. For instance, it could allow us to, push back some attacks, for instance, for some bad instances out there. We could say, okay, that UID we know is bad. So everything that comes from that person is bad, or that instance. And so basically the instance is going to automatically register and authenticate. Then it's going to be served back given what we call, as I said earlier, an update level. What that means is that basically it's going to tell the instance, the Evergreen instance, what it needs to be downloading to actually be able to start. Because it's maybe not that obvious, but locally, when you start a Jenkins Evergreen instance, it's roughly empty. There's only the bootstrap code, what we call the Evergreen client here, that part. And the Jenkins, the plugins and everything are not here yet. They are going to be downloaded after the first startup. Then, when you are going to be entering somewhat the nominal use case, usability day-to-day is going to be upgraded and updated automatically as we go when we push updates on the backend side. So what's going to happen back then? Well, it's going kind of the same, but you are going to be going from a given update level. Then on each upgrade, it's going to be just before updating, snapshotting the file system, then upgrading, then restarting, then on restart, the client here is going to, anyway, so yeah. So the client is going to be automatically health checking the Evergreen instance here, the master, the Jenkins master. And if it, for instance, doesn't come back, then it's going to automatically say, talk back to the backend and say, okay, I failed. So let's please, at least for my perspective, please taint that level because it's failed for me. So now, please tell me what update level I should be. So what's going to be allowed in this case is that basically the instance from the backend is going to be, the backend is going to know that the instance failed on a given update level and is going to be serving that instance the highest update level it can. Basically, it's going to be reverting to the previous one, most of the time. And so while doing that, we are under the hood also using Git, which is, by the way, described again openly because it's been designed in the open in the so-called JEP 302, which describes the snapshotting process. The health checking, for instance, is the JEP 306. So just to explain that if you're interested, because that's kind of the gist of the talk now compared to Tyler's talk earlier, it's more to talk about the technical details and everything. So the health checking, for instance, is described in a dedicated JEP. So once things are updated, then you're good to go and you can keep going. So now I've talked a bit about the beginning of the talk about how we leverage the logging and temperature rigging and why and how your instance is connected to the backend and reports automatically the things that go wrong. So I'm going to go into more detail than just that slide where afterwards. So I'm just going to explain quickly how it works. So basically, your instance is connected. So it's going to push its error logging to Sentry through actually checking the disk and everything. I will explain that a bit more afterward, but basically sending things to our backend, then forwarding to Sentry. Sentry is a nice tool which is sponsoring the Jenkins project so that we have a free account to basically do error aggregation and nice UI to match errors between many source that are sending those kind of things. So then we are able, as developers, to actually analyze the different failures we see or just error or just warnings that are reported to the backend and able to then file issues and then ship it to the different instances out there. So let's dig into some demo. Should work. So I'm going to just show you first how you start a Jenkins Evergreen instance. So that's a bit specific case here. So what you want to look at is more the one in the bottom. So by the way, if you look at Jenkins.io, there's now a sub-project called Evergreen. And what I'm showing you right now is documented there. So if you want to have a look, this is not just alpha state and working on my machine. So I'm going to just ask to start a new Evergreen instance. And for the sake of this demonstration, I do want to break the actual backend that is located at evergreen.jenkins.io, which lists the different update levels available out there. I actually spawned dedicated something backend for my demonstration to be able to push updates for the sake of the demo. So I'm going to just open it. So you see that's slightly different, but yeah, it's the same idea. So you see what's happening in the background here, because I connected it to the backend. It's basically now doing what I was explaining before. So I'm going to scroll up a bit to show you what I wanted to show you. Basically, it's been here. So yeah, it's been here connected to the backend. Above here, it's been registering. Then it's been registering here, you see. And then it's been connected to backend, and then receive a big chunk of basically a JSON file. Then starting to, so this is because we are right now, this is a work in progress developing the health checking. So it's not working totally, but let's ignore that for now. But what's more interesting here is you see that it's starting to fetch the different WAR and plugins that's described at that update level. The update level is basically a JSON file, and I will maybe show you that a bit in more depth afterwards. So it's going to be downloading and everything. And once it's done, basically the client is going to instruct the Jenkins to try and restart, because now there's a WAR and there's plugins. And so it's starting. And so if I show you now, what it's looking like, there's an instance ready to be for you to log in. And so if I show you, this is how you retrieve the password. It's similar to the location where you typically know when you don't have the UI, form when you're starting a usual non-evergreen in a Jenkins instance. And so where was it? Here. And then, so I'm logged in. And so I'm going to save it for the sake of the demo. Okay. So now that's fine. We have actually now an instance running and connected to the backend. And so this instance is now connected and going to be updated each time I push an upgrade. So, and for the sake of the demo, I also actually spawned 2 different instances and those addresses. And so what I want to show you now for the demo, I'm going to show you something here. So you see here, I'm going to use the other one, which is a different one, just so that we can compare the different UIs. It's more obvious for you that what we did. So here there's something we want to get rid of, right? So I'm a developer, as a developer of Evergreen, I want to only allow pipelines, because this is first-class citizen in Evergreen for a variety of reasons, but for the obvious path of success pillar, which I talked about earlier, we want to, only recommend users to an easy path of success. So what I'm going to do here, because I already hid the Freestyle project and the Maven native projects, I'm going to try and remove the multi-configuration project. And I did that this morning. So how does it work? It's pretty easy. So this morning, I filed a PR here. On the Evergreen project, that actually on the Evergreen plugin, Jenkins plugin, because in Evergreen there's a special Evergreen Jenkins plugin that's able to add features or wire things together. And here, so you don't want to look into the specifics of the Java code and everything, but basically I added some features. So how do I ship that to the instances out there? So right now that is not shipped. For the sake of the demo, the first instance I spawned doesn't have that modification. So in the scope of the Evergreen project, we wanted in the Jenkins developer community be able to deliver fixes without having to go to the full release cycle for plugins. Because, for instance, waiting for a plugin developer to do a Maven release. We wanted to do some kind of more continuous release of each core, be it the Jenkins core or plugins. So each time you merge a plugin that's been what we call incrementalified, it's going to be automatically creating a release of that plugin that's directly usable by whoever wants to use it. I would say whoever is normally not designed to be used outside of the Evergreen scope because it's going to be garbage collected at some point. It's not, if you know Maven well enough, you know that normally releases in Maven are intangible, immutable, you never really delete them. It's not the case for special incremental releases for the Jenkins project. So basically what I'm going to try and show you right now is to match. So here, if I go to the commits, I'm going to open this and while it's loading. You see here there are a few commits, and so A9, EC, blah, blah, blah. So I know the path here. Obviously, what I'm showing you here is because of the gist of the presentation. We have tooling to do that automatically. I will show you just a few minutes from now how it's done a bit more easily and when we actually commit a change that is higher level than that in the code, and then everything is generated dynamically. So what I'm doing right now is just to make you understand what we do. So I'm going to look for, let's say, oh no, I'm wrong, it's not here, sorry. IO, Jenkins, plugins, Evergreen. So, and here it's A9, right? So A9 something. No. Okay, so that one is the plugin I want to ship. So how do I do that? Basically, I prepared that before, obviously, for obvious reason of the presentation. So this is the remove matrix. If I look at that file, the difference between the first one and the second one is just that I'm, so the first one is the one you actually already saw in deployed. So I'm going to make that a bit bigger. So you see the difference in that basically I upgraded the plugin from the RC52 to RC58. If I show you that again, you see it's that one, A9ECD. A9 ECD. So that's the one. So now what I'm going to do is that, by the way, that is what is automated by the backend when we merge a PR on the GitHub repo of Evergreen, but what I'm going to do by hand here for the sake of the demonstration. Here I'm going to just use my little script, and then I'm going to push here. So just show you quickly. Let's close that. Oops, not that. That is the backend. So right now we are on the update level 33, right? If I show you, by the way, that instance, you see that it's regularly reporting the fact that it's at which update level it's at. So right now you see it's reporting to the backend. I think now it's configured to be every 5 minutes that it's at the update level 33. So normally, if I push something here, when I'm going to create a new update level, it's then going to be right away pushed to the different instances out there to update them. So let's see what happens. So it's been done. You see HTTP 201. It's a bit rough, a bit technical, but that's the goal here. And if I go back to here and I update, you see that it's now a new update level 34, sorry. And if I go back to the logs of things, it went pretty fast, but basically now Jenkins has already restarted on the 2 instances I was talking about earlier, and the new one I just provisioned in front of you. So it was that one, I think. Do we see that there? I'm looking for the update level, but basically I'm going to show you what it looks like now in the UI. So normally, now if I refresh on the left so that you can better compare the two, basically you see that I shipped the plugin, and so you see that the thing was filtered out because basically I just shipped the new plugin that filters that out. So there was no intervention on the instance side, and actually so I put that here so that you would see the difference, but it's the same. If I refresh that, it's also been updated. And it's also the case if I show you the localhost 1 instances I just started at the beginning of the presentation. And if I go just to create a new item, it's a bit slow, sorry. it's the same because the 3 instances running have been served. And if I show you the backend, here you can see that we actually have the information that we have the number of instances running each level. So there's a bug right now, I think, about the number of instances running those levels. But basically, we have the data on the backend about the things that are connected because basically, this is how we push updates and everything. So, and it works for anything. Now, I can show you, for instance, you see here, we are running the 2, 1, 4, 2, blah, blah, blah. And so I prepared for the presentation a different update level where basically I just wanted to update the core, the Jenkins core being in use for the instances, the Evergreen instances out there. So you see here the difference between those 2 JSON files are the fact that only the war got updated from that version to the latest one, which basically, if you look at, again, the repository of Jenkins, sorry. And here you see that there's an AF, blah, 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 something, and you see that we are actually upgrading to the latest of latest. So when I was saying that weeklies are pretty old for Evergreen, that's what I mean. We are really shipping the latest tip of the master branch of Jenkins. By the way, you might be wondering or be concerned by the fact it might be not really well battle tested and everything. That's kind of the goal of Evergreen. When we have, for now it's not the case yet because we are just getting started and it would be too early for that, but we have the whole thing in the back end to be able to support different channels as I was explaining at the beginning. So in the future we will have, for instance, Canary instances in a Canary channel where we will basically in addition of the automated testing we have for all updates, we will be shipping this and using them maybe for some part of ci.jenkins.io, the public instance, or from public testing, and then progressively deploying, even on some given channel, deploying in a progressive way to see how it behaves, kind of pushing to some 5% of instances and see how it behaves, how it reacts. If we see more error logs in the backend, if not, then push a bit more. And if we see a lot of errors, then just stop pushing more and try to understand before we go further, right? So let's try to push that to see what happens. So I'm going to just push the, I said, the second one, which is about the core update. So when I'm going to do that, to remind you with that, it should be now upgrading from, I didn't upgrade that one, yeah, right. From 34 to 35 in that case, I guess. Let's try. It was going fine until now, but not now anyway. So let's cross fingers, it's going to come back. And so what's going to happen here is that it's going to push a new update on the backend and then it's going to be served the same way. So just to show you and kind of wrap up, that is going to be the same. It seems that it doesn't want to work anymore. What the heck? Just checking something and then we'll just, I guess, stop trying. So that's not really important anyway. I just wanted to show you here that it would be upgrading. I mean, even the core is not reserved to plugins. It doesn't work anyway. So it doesn't crash. I hope not. All right. I don't know what was happening, but yes, this time it seemed to have worked. So you see that it's been served to the backend and it's going pretty fast. So you see the Jenkins of the Evergreen one is already restarting. The same for the second one. And so now if I go on the page, that one, sorry, you see if I upgrade, if I refresh here on the left, it should be coming. Yeah. So you see that normally, you see that it's been updated to the latest score. So we've just pushed for instance, that would be working for that. A new update of the core because we want to fix a security issue before everyone notice, or we've been fixing something in the security team and we're pushing out things. So by the way, this is, for instance, a very useful case for the future. Right now, as it works when we are about to publish a security release and announcements and everything. What happens is that we upgrade, say, ci.jenkins.io manually before, through the tooling to do that, before the announcements. But we can't do anything for the vulnerable instances out there. But in that case, we would actually push probably the update just before the announcement, the same way we do update the thing we have the management keys on. So that's pretty compelling, yeah. So I'm now going to be digging a bit on how does that telemetry works. So, oh wait, I screwed up. So I'm going to show you now a few real-life examples of things that were actually already fixed, even if it's already been open to a few alpha testers, mostly community members who wanted to try, when it was starting to work. And we actually already fixed a few issues in Jenkins and in plugins just by that way. So it's really, really encouraging and yeah, thrilling to think that we are going to be able to be so valuable information from actual instance running out there and be able to fix things in, say, hours and not just fix, also ship the fixes to the actual instances out there in, let's say, even less than 24 hours or less, if we are able to find the fix that fast. But basically here, so we were receiving in Sentry, so that's the Sentry UI. We were receiving something that was a message about filtering out. So that was actually coming in that case from my plugin. I was too aggressive about the level of my log. So I was a bit stupid. That's not really a bug, but that's something that's going to be cluttering the logs and everything. So a fix was needed, right? So we were discussing that with Jesse, and it was marked as an issue and everything. So what the hell is this warning? So we have a big, quick discussion. Okay, fixed in that. So then I file a correction, which is basically lowering from warning to fine, right? So you see it's on the 20th of August. Then how do I ship that to production? Then I'm just going to actually file that in Evergreen itself. I'm going to just bump from the previous, so if you look at this here, basically it's going to be that, I think. Yeah, you see, here the commit number, 723 and everything is going to be here. So it was on the 20th of August in 1 a.m. Basically, between that and that, I think there was like 3 hours. So that's an example of where basically error logging helped us, fixing something in less than 6 hours, and not only fixing again, but shipping it to production. And another cool example, and I guess I'm not going to show every one of them because we are running out of time then. For instance, in that case, it was actually upgrading the latest config as code plugin so that we would get rid of some issues. And you see it's exactly the same. So now I'm going to explain quickly, because I want to keep some time for potential questions. How do we work? How do we do the log forwarding? I'm just going to zoom into that because there are many things to be able to zoom into, but I'm going to show you how it works because I think it's interesting. So basically, we have in the Jenkins plugin, the Evergreen Jenkins plugin, something that's going to be basically watching the logs. If you know about Java, it's basically watching the Java util logging that's happening. And then it's going to actually be serializing this in a special format on the disk. And that format, that file is watched by what we call the Evergreen client. It's that code, which is going to watch that. And on each new line, it's going to send that thing to our Evergreen backend. And what's going to be doing the Evergreen backend then? It's going to just receiving that log and forwarding it back again to Sentry. So why do we do that? Why don't we send it directly to Sentry? Maybe it's obvious. It's just because if in the future, for whatever reason, we need to change or we need to do some pre-processing before sending it to Sentry or whatever reason, we still have the hand without having to upgrade the instances out there. It's slightly kind of an architecture reason. So that's what I wanted to show you pretty quickly. I think it's clear enough. So I'm going now to go back to here. So what are the upcoming challenges in Evergreen right now? What's the state of the project? Basically, we are right now implementing the rollback feature of the Evergreen, and it's almost done. So it needs then to be deployed and battle tested, but basically it's starting to work. The health checking is written. It's also, we are doing also something pretty interesting and pretty critical for the success of the project. We are now able to basically, update on that diagram we were seeing earlier, the right part of Evergreen, basically the Jenkins part. But right now we are not able to update the client part. And this is what we're doing right now. Be able to also update the side process, which we call, again, the Evergreen client, that's controlling Jenkins. We also need to upgrade that part sometimes. So this is being done while I'm speaking. There's also the metrics telemetry. You saw the telemetry logging, but we also want to be able to ship back to the Evergreen backend some metrics about maybe the number of pipelines, the number of errors, in terms of a number of steps or pipeline steps, or so to have an idea, because it could help, for instance, pipeline developers to have an idea of, well, what's the actual picture out there of people using pipeline? Are they having a very big pipeline, or more calling some shell steps or something? So it's not. If you are wondering, I'm absolutely not saying we are going to ship, in any case, the content of it, but just the statistics, because obviously we don't want to ship private data to Evergreen. But yeah, it's very, very interesting, because really, as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of good things for users in Evergreen, but really, there's also a bunch of good things for developers and overall for everyone to actually, go faster and allow both developers to actually, deliver fixes and be interested in it. I mean, if I was telling you as a developer, would you like to be able to fix something, and in the next hour be able to know if your fix actually produced the expected effect, you would probably like that idea. I mean, that's kind of today becoming more and more common. The fact we want data about the thing we do, but be able to actually do that for real is really fascinating. So yeah, and what we didn't start working really yet now on is to actually make sure now the end user story is wrapped up and everything works fine, and kind of working through creating a pipeline, connecting to GitHub and everything. That's not really working well right now, so that's why also we are saying it's not production ready yet, but it's really the right time if you want to have a look and hack on it and maybe contribute to it, because we are really that's really the right time to provide feedback and maybe to work on it, because if you're interested, that's not too big yet. So yeah. I think I made it clear. I want to keep time for questions, but yeah. So how does it work? That's kind of a summary, how you can be getting started on hacking on Evergreen. And so if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yep. So the question is this alpha or beta right now? Yeah, it is. It's not production ready yet. So we are really eager for testers and feedback from people who would be possibly interested in that when it's production ready. But definitely it's not ready yet for production usage.
So I mean, it was really cool seeing you deploy like that. But I assume there'd be some kind of testing step.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. So the question is that I was like YOLO deploying changes to a production out there. So when we are doing that through our usual process, which by the way I can show a bit on our repo. Basically, when I'm shipping something for real, it's when I'm modifying here some things in the essential.yaml. You're going to see it's a bit higher level and more readable. Basically, we're doing something like this, and we are actually filing a PR. And then when I'm filing that PR, there's going to be a big pipeline, a pretty big pipeline, I would say. Not as big as it should, but it's not. We can always do more tests. And they're going to be testing the change and making things our tests still, succeed and everything. So obviously, for the reason of the sake of the presentation, I couldn't go through that thing that is roughly now 30 minutes or something each time. But yeah, we don't ship in a YOLO mode every changes we think should be interesting to test out there without actually going through more than basic tests. I mean, we do check, for instance, that when we're shipping that kind of thing, we're really starting locally during the pipeline, tests like checking the instance that starts with that subset of plugin, and testing a few things like, okay, do the logs still, go through and everything, so yeah.
I assume the PR that you end up doing, or the branch you end up doing the fix on, is that something that you allow the reporter then to say, hey, you reported this thing, you want to check it out, or is that not?
So I'm not sure what the question actually. Could you please rephrase?
So just another QA step, would you allow the actual customer that reported the
That's interesting. So the question would be, would we try to get the review of the people reporting that issue, and given issue to that PR? Well, that depends. So because it's anonymous, we only have a UID of the instance, and we have no idea where it's located in the world. So if it's something really a big crash, which hopefully it's unlikely, from someone who's reporting, as a human in the chat or something, then yes, definitely we're probably going to try and get the feedback of that person. In the case of what I've showed you before, basically it's anonymous. We are only be able to map users to UIDs because we know it's a single user, we don't know where it is. So we can't really request feedback from those users as it is. And kind of fortunate, we can't identify you. That's kind of feature.
But in that case, that was somebody reported it yourself?
Nope. I think it was just us seeing on the Evergreen backend, on the Sentry, a log that was concerning. So we analyzed where it was coming from, a given plugin or something, and then we fixed it and we shipped it.
So it was all telemetry?
Yeah. Is there any question?
So, as I understand, you won't be able to install custom plugins on Evergreen, right?
Yes. So the question is, we will be able to install custom plugins. As it is right now, it's going to be no. Yeah. Because, well, it's kind of a bit early to, open the Pandora box. Because we are trying very hard to provide something that's stable to the users who don't want to care about administering Jenkins. So if we are allowing people to allow whatever plugins, and if you know about Jenkins a bit, you know that a single plugin that's written badly could actually crash the whole instance. So we don't want that. We want to test the thing that's going to be actually deployed in production. So that doesn't mean that in the future we won't allow that, but during the ramp up of the project, we do think, and we actually change our mind about that, it's probably too early to be able to cope with that. But definitely, we want to think about some process for users to report, for contributors to say, hey, I think that plugin is missing from the Evergreen default distribution, and that's stupid. So could you please add that blah, blah, blah plugin, because I think it's useful for 99% of the people out there. So definitely there's almost certain that right now there's some plugins like this are missing, because we didn't spend, as I said, a lot of time on the user end stories. But yeah. So the question is that if I really want to install a custom plugin of mine or something that's not in the default distribution, could I install it? As it is right now, no. But I mean, it's a project that is still in early phase. we can't say what we will be able to allow in the future. The thing is we want to leverage, I mean, that's the goal of the project. We don't want to crush it. So if we allow some variations, we need to do that in a safe way, because that's kind of, the most important thing is not to crush instances out there. So yeah, and find a balance.
So you were running, so there's evergreen.jenkins.io, and then you had your own version, .batman.
Yeah.
Are we able to kind of do the same thing? You have that project open source?
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was saying, everything is open source, even the backend. So under the repo that I showed on that page, where was it? Yeah, it was here. So you see the one at the beginning that make, check, and everything. So that repo contains everything, the distribution and the backend. Okay. So basically, when you're running, by the way, the third line, the make run, you're triggering the run, the execution of both the backend and a special, an instance that's going to connect locally to the backend running locally. So yeah.
With respect to the same question, how can we keep synchronizing our backend with the Jenkins IO?
So the question is that if I wanted to install in-house the backend so that I would leverage Evergreen in my company, for instance, well, I would say I have no idea right now because it's too early, because we didn't consider that. It's totally technically feasible already. I would say it's a bit early even for you, because probably we are going to ourselves detect some bugs. Well, if you do, I guess it's just, software as usual. You would probably use a fork or something and be able to report things, or maybe deploy or make sure you are diffing, or that would be kind of normal deploy of software. You would have to actually handle updates, which is. Anything else? Any question?
I guess most of the client is Jenkins specific, but is the backend generic enough so that you could consider using the same infrastructure for other software than Jenkins? Is where you're crazy hot.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to answer with that one because I guess it's more the right thing to do. So it's an Evergreen hat, in case you wonder. Yeah, so the question is that could we use the backend for something else than Jenkins Evergreen? I would say, well, if you're a developer, you can do anything, right? But it's not been designed, in a way that we were thinking, oh, how could we do that work for anything? That would probably have been the right way to not ship anything anytime. So to not finish the project or not to ship anything, that would be the right way. Yeah, if you look at the JSON file, there are some Jenkins level of things, but there's metadata and parts and everything, so you could probably design some new parts or some specific, add some part to be able to handle some specific things. But you would have, as it stands right now, to be able to design, which is not the case right now, where it has to go. For instance, we do know on the client side what is served from the server, where plugins has to go. If you want to make it generic, probably we want the server to say where things have to go on the client to make it dumb enough so that we don't have to maintain the client and the server too much. But yes, it's kind of, yeah, don't do that. Anything else? So thank you, everyone. If you have any question anyway, so you have the link to the project, and the Gitter chat is open and linked from the README of that repo. So anyone is open and welcome to participate. And thank you a lot for your attention.